Hello everyone, this is Evan Abrams, and in this tutorial we're going to take this grid of layers and make them react to a single layer. This is handy in something like FUI, where you want to show something is getting selected or highlighted. It can be nice in explainer videos to convey some visual metaphors perhaps. Imagine how terrible it would be if we had to animate all these things manually. Certainly we want to avoid doing more work than we have to. That's why people come to this channel, right? We're going to look at how we might do this with expressions inside of After Effects. Then we're going to look at how we might use some third-party plugins to achieve this kind of thing. And then finally, we're going to see how this might be handled with C4d Lite. So watch out for that. I'm glad you've selected to watch this tutorial, and I hope that you react favorably to it. Since those are two truly bad word jokes, it's time to get started. This video is brought to you by Skillshare. Make 2020 a year where you explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity with Skillshare's online classes. Skillshare is an online learning community that offers membership with meaning. With so much to explore, real projects to create, and the support of fellow creatives, Skillshare empowers you to accomplish real growth. Skillshare offers classes designed for real life, so you can move your creative journey forward without putting your life on hold. You can learn and grow with short classes that fit your busy routine. If you're watching this channel, you'll likely enjoy their classes on animation, like this excellent course from Russ Etheridge. In 3D for 2D animators, getting started in Cinema 4D, Russ really breaks down the basics in a very excellent way. If you're currently looking for how to bring 3D elements into your workflow, check out this course. I think it'll help you make that jump that'll really elevate your works. Skillshare is also incredibly affordable, especially when compared to pricey in-person classes and workshops. An annual subscription is less than $10 a month, and members get unlimited access to thousands of inspiring classes with hands-on projects and feedback from a community of millions. And as a little bonus, the first 1,000 people who use the link in the description will get a free trial of Skillshare's premium membership. First up, we're going to keep it all vanilla, out of the box After Effects. And if we're talking about making one thing respond to another thing, we should probably start thinking about expressions. Expressions at their most basic level simply describe the relationship between two properties. I've already made this grid of layers, and you can see that these could be anything at all. Any layer you want is fine. And the property I'm going to modify about them is scale, so that when this cursor-looking buddy comes along, they're going to get larger when they're hovered over or when the cursor is near them. So on all of their scales, I've put this many-lined expression. Many of these lines are just variables, linking these properties to slider controls, so I can change all of them at once for all of the layers. Anytime you're looking at applying the same expression to many layers, consider slider controls for your variables. That's going to give you flexibility later on. But let's break down what we're seeing here and how the logic works so that you can incorporate this kind of thinking into your projects. This whole thing hinges on the use of linear. Linear is remapping the values from an input range to an output range. So in this case, it's evaluating this first variable D, which in this case is the length between 2 points. And these points are where that null is at and where this layer itself is at. So as D changes from what we've called the hit out to the hit in variable, which are these two sliders here, those are going to define what we might otherwise call a hitbox. How close and how far do we start caring about these two things coming into contact with each other? So linear is going to remap those to our scale from and scale to variables. When we are 100 pixels or above away, when these things are far apart from each other, the output number is going to be 25. And when we're at 0 pixels close, or right on top of it, we're going to be at 100. And in between, that means we're going to be somewhere in between. This last line here is using that variable R in both parts of the scale so that it scales uniformly. Scale needs to be in two parts like this or it gets confused, and we don't want to confuse a computer. They don't like that. But when we push this out to all the layers and waggle the null around, you can see the response. If we extend that hitbox, we make that upper bound larger, we can affect more layers depending on how we dial it in. And we could have them scale up, we could have them scale down. Really depends on what you do with these variables now. There are a few trouble spots in here. Every layer is evaluating this stuff on every frame. So this can grind your machine if you get many layers going. And the hitboxes are circles. That one might not be a bummer for you, but if you had a grid of lights, say, and you wanted them to turn on or off as something moved over them, and you had these little gaps in between caused by circular hitboxes on square layers, that wouldn't do it all, would it? So the expression changes just a little if we want rectangular hitboxes. In particular, I want to get the size of the layer in play here, and we need to measure two lengths by breaking down the horizontal and vertical lengths. We take the first part and the second part respectively. That's the little 0 and 1 in the square brackets here mean. Here's where things get a little wacky depending on what you want to do with this new information and how you want these things to behave. In this case, I'm interested in two states, when the null enters that hitbox and then any other time. That's what this if-else is all about. If the horizontal length from the null to the layer is less than half of the horizontal size of the layer, and the vertical length from the null to the layer is less than half of the vertical length of that box, or in more simple terms, when the null is over top of the box, we're going to do this. And that chunk says just scale down to 0, just get out of here. Otherwise, else, let's leave the R value at 100. So it'll be 100 out of 100 scale, or just normal. Obviously, we could code all kinds of things with these components, but I think looking at these, you've got to be saying there has to be a simpler way. Well, this is a problem that many have pondered for a while. It's a classic issue. So as you can imagine, there are several third-party plugins that try to solve this very problem with varying levels of success. Creating arrays and manipulating them is very well-trod territory. For example, here's Cloners and Effectors by Crunchy. Let me take a shot at it. And then we got Moglyph FX by Fremix. That's another, but using glyphs specifically. So another kind of methodology to get you there. And then we have Easy Clones 2 by MW Motion. This is a third one. We can get some clones and propagate changes through those clones. So if you want a third-party solution, there are options. But I want to show you something, maybe a methodology that is more common. And maybe you've already got something installed that can do this. Having many, many things and manipulating them as a group is something very easily done with a particle system. There are, of course, many, many, many third-party particle systems you might enjoy. So if we want a grid of things we can scale up and down, we just need to fire up our persistent particle system of choice. Here we have an example using Form by Trapcode from Red Giant. I'm using Form to create this array that is 500 pixels large, and I've just asked to put 10 horizontal by 10 vertical by 1 deep in that space. I can change these to be a sprite. In this case, this is a square. And then I want to change or impact these particles, which we commonly do with something called a map. This is going to take visual information and map it onto this system. So here is a layer that itself is 500 by 500 pixels. And I'm putting a circle on there using the circle effect. We're going to set this to normal so that we are drawing the circle on the black solid. I'm going to feather it out a little bit, change the size maybe, and we'll use the position here to select which particles we want to be different. This layer has black pixels and then white pixels, and this is going to be the map that we use to make Form do something. So if in Form we go into layer maps, we're going to go down to size here, and we're going to choose what plane we want to map this over. For us, that's going to be the XY, the horizontal and vertical. And then we choose which layer we want After Effects to use, and we're going to say use it after masks and effects have been applied. So now that black and white info is going to be making things larger or smaller. So now we just need to change the map in order to change these particles. If stuff is getting too large, too small, then we need to dial in the values of the map. So maybe we use a curves on here to adjust this layer a little bit. But applying a map to particle systems is hopefully a fairly common method you can use to solve this problem. We can apply the same idea in Plexus, for example. As you can see, they have a layer map feature, and it is a form of particle system. So the options will be found in different places. Maybe they'll have different names, but in your persistent particle system of choice, if you have access to a method where you can manually control the particles in this way, you're going to be all good. But wait, there's more. Included with After Effects is something called Cinema 4d Lite. And Cinema 4d is uniquely suited to solve this very problem. So to fire that up, we're going to make a new comp, and we're going to right-click in here and say New Cinema 4d Lite file. So here in Cinema 4d Lite, we have access to some of the tools, but not all of the tools. I'm going to start by making a cube and then thinning it out on the Z-axis. Now I need more cubes. We could just make a heap of cubes, duplicating, moving them around. I'm going to make instances. Sadly, we don't have access to a grid array of some kind in here. So I'm just making instances of the cube and moving them around. An instance is a copy that just references the original. So if I change that original shape, then everything else is going to change along with it. But these could be anything, lots and lots of anythings that we put out here. And then I'm going to take all of those things and I'm going to put them in a fracture object, which doesn't break things apart like a window, as you might imagine, but it's going to let us mess with all of the parts and interact with it as a system. So now we want to mess with the system. We want to affect it with an effector. So here's an effector called the plane effector. This is a pretty common term you're going to hear, plane effector. We're basically going to change something about all the little bits. Let's say we want to change all the bits to scale them down. So we just go into our plane effector, we affect the scale, and now all the bits are being affected. Now we want to choose which of the bits are being affected by this effector. So to do that, we're going to go into fall off and add a field in here. And we're going to make mine spherical, a spherical field, please. And now only where we see the sphere intersect with the bits are we going to see that plane effector take hold to do something to them. So we have a group of things, we have a change we want to do to them, and then we choose which of the things and how they're going to be impacted. We could invert this relationship. We could move around the field. We could grow it or shrink it. We could do so many lovely things, even in this light version of Cinema 4D. But we've now accomplished the exact thing that we set out to do. If we want to push this back into After Effects, you can see that the Cineware effect is rendering this thing very nicely. Looks just like it did in the viewport. Probably want to refine this a little bit. So in Cinema 4D Lite, we will add a camera. I'm going to make mine parallel so that it has no perspective to it. So it's totally flat. And then I'm going to set that up right here where I want it. I'm going to add the vibrate tag to that spherical field, which is like adding the wiggle expression to something in After Effects. So now we have some motion going around. Now, if you had access to the full version of Cinema 4D, you can make arrays of clones much easier using the MoGraph cloner. It takes far fewer steps to create arrays and more advanced arrays and different fields, different effectors, so many more options. It is endless. But you know what isn't endless? This tutorial, because we're here at the end. We've done the same thing so many different ways with varying degrees of complexity, fidelity, different programs, different programming. So hopefully it's been fun. If this is the kind of thing you like to learn, and I really can't imagine why you wouldn't want a video showing you the same thing 4 different ways, but if this is for you, then make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the tutorials when they come out. There's new stuff happening here all the time, and would love to know what methods you use to achieve this kind of thing if you're doing something different. If you have any questions about anything you see on this channel, let me know in the comments, and I will try to help you out as best I can. If you make something cool with this, and I'm sure you will, I would love to see it. Tweet it at me or tag me on Instagram. I'm at EC Abrams on all those places. I'm actually at EC Abrams pretty much any place you look. If you like this kind of thing, but you'd like it to be longer and less structured and live, then come hang out with me on Twitch and Behance. I'm at EC Abrams over there as well, as I said, and we're streaming every weekend. Anyway, that'll do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Be kind to each other, stay creative, and I'll see you around the internet.